Suppose I said that I could give you the chance to expunge the guilt.
Welcome to Cal's Cinema. This is The Proposition.
Suppose I gave you till Christmas. I suppose you tell me what it is I want from you.
You want me to kill me, brother?
I want you to kill your brother.
Would you kill one brother to save the other? That's the scenario set forth at the start of The Proposition, Nick Cave's gritty Australian Western. Released in 2005, this violent period piece about bushranger brothers, set against the backdrop of the brutality of the colonised outback of the 1880s, has largely gone under the radar as opposed to bigger budget American westerns released at the same time, such as 3:10 to Yuma and the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Gotta get that full title in there. So this video will take a look at whether The Proposition deserves more recognition than it has, as well as giving the film the usual score out of 10. Now that it's well into the new year, I'll be getting back to the 2 videos a week schedule, so be sure to make sure you're subscribed and keep coming back so we can continue to look at some films together.
You want to know why I've come back?
I know why you've come back, Charlie. Look at that.
The Australian musician as well as occasional actor Nick Cave is also a writer and penned the screenplay for The Proposition. It's hard to believe that this is the same writer that came up with the plot for the mental original Gladiator sequel, which sounded insane but very watchable if you want to look it up. No, The Proposition is a lot more grounded, plausible and apparently faithful to the world and time frame that it's set in. Directed by John Hillcoat, the Western presents the realities of life for Australians in the 1880s, whether they were white or Aboriginal. More on that later. Its grim outlook and shades of grey morality is typical of the modern Western, and the film avoids pulling any punches right from the start.
Arthur Burns is a monster. An abomination. What happened at the Hopkins place was unforgivable.
Guy Pearce, star of Memento and The Time Machine, plays Charlie Burns, the middle brother of the Burns gang, violent bushrangers of the outback. After Charlie and younger brother Mikey split off from their older brother Arthur to start a new gang, they've been tracked down and arrested after a shootout by London Boulevard's and sexy beast Ray Winstone, here as Captain Stanley. In a move to capture the notoriously elusive Arthur, played by 30 Days of Night's Marlowe and Yellowstone's Dan Jenkins, Danny Houston, Stanley, in his mission to, in his own words, civilise Australia, makes a deal with Charlie before releasing him. The proposition is that if Charlie can kill Arthur and presumably return to Stanley with proof, then Stanley will release Mikey. If he fails to carry this out within 9 days, Mikey will hang as punishment for the gang's gruesome killings.
What a vile specimen of humanity. What a little piece of filth.
The rest of the cast is filled out with Tinker Tailor Soldier Spies Control, John Hurt, here as bounty hunter Jellin Lamb. Small things like these, Sister Mary, Emily Watson as Stanley's wife Martha, 300 Stelios and Lord of the Rings Faramir, David Wenham as Eaton Fletcher. The film is given further authenticity by including roles for noted Aboriginal actors Red Hill's Jimmy Conway, Tommy Lewis as 2 Bob, and Crocodile Dundee's Neville Bell, David Gulpilil as Jacko. And now, before we get into how Stanley's proposition works out, here is where we include the usual spoiler warning. If you've not seen The Proposition and would like to know what happens for yourself, then check it out and come back to this video.
Escort Mrs. Stanley home and wait there till I return.
How long will you be, dear?
Later.
Stanley's proposition is a desperate play for both he and Charlie, and one that if you're a fan of the genre, you already know is bound to not end well. While Charlie tracks down Arthur and is delayed by both a spear to the chest and his own inaction in killing his brother, one who he knows deep down needs to be stopped, Stanley struggles to maintain control over the townspeople and his own men, as they demand that Mikey both be brutally flogged and eventually hanged. Fletcher's order of 100 lashes is protested against by Stanley, who knows that the younger brother will die from the ordeal, and that this will bring the wrath of the remaining brothers back on the town. In fact, from the depraved killings of the Burns gang to the institutionalized violence of the authorities, the film makes it clear that the supposedly civilized white men of the colonized land are in fact the true barbarians of the story, as opposed to the indigenous population of Australia.
We are white men, sir. Are beasts.
Despite the strong performances from Guy Pearce as weary Charlie and Danny Houston as charismatic but sadistic Arthur, including decent efforts at Irish accents from both brothers, the surprising standout performance of the film comes from Ray Winstone as Captain Stanley, whose layered portrayal of a man with his own moral compass who chooses to stoop to endanger the life of a young man not responsible for his actions, and is in turn himself tortured by it, is in my opinion one of the best performances of his career, ranked up there with Nil by Mouth and of course Sexy Beast.
Fucking snake. Why are you still standing there?
Aside from the cast and performances, the film looks great with its use of the beautiful but unforgiving Australian landscape, shot on location in Winstone, complementing the harshness of the story. Screenwriter Nick Cave's haunting soundtrack also adds an extra dimension to both Charlie and Stanley's struggles, and helps keep the viewer invested where the pacing slows down in the more contemplative scenes of Charlie wandering through the outback, although the 1 hour 42 minute runtime is hardly a slog to get through. By the end of the film, Charlie finally does the right thing and puts several bullets, in his brother and ends the madness of the Burns gang, something that he initially set out to escape at the start of the film, and now as his dying elder brother asks him what he will do, Charlie will have to decide to carry on this cycle of violence in further revenge against the authorities, or to live what is left of his life in peace with a bounty over his head. It's a blunt ending and initially causes some head scratching, but the question proposed is that what will Charlie's life look like without a family to fight for, and what new meaning can he find before his time is up? So, what's the verdict on The Proposition? Well, I'll admit that I hadn't heard of the film until recently, but I'm glad I got around to checking it out. With a smaller story and room for reflection between the scenes of intense violence, Nick Cave's Aussie Western may not be to everyone's taste, but with Ray Winstone's role standing out amongst a host of strong performances and a gritty, realistic plot for that period in Australia, there's not a lot to complain about with The Proposition. If pushed to fault it, I'd say that the story is maybe a tad light beyond the central struggle of killing Arthur and rescuing Mikey, and I would have liked to have seen both of Charlie's relationships with his brothers fleshed out beyond the scenes they had together, but there's enough there to already understand the dynamic of the family. That said, The Proposition has already become one of my favourite westerns and gains a score of 8.7 out of 10.
Life is very sweet, brother.
Life is very sweet, brother. Who would wish to die?
So, what did you think of The Proposition? Is this understated film your style of western, or do you prefer more action in your Wild West films? You can let me know in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe, and come back again to Cal Cinema.